Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Shelter Rock. We gather this Sunday and every Sunday here in Manhasset, New York, on the indigenous lands of the Manitancock people in our beautiful worship room, named specifically to honor our humanist roots. Of humanism, Bet Chambers, former president of the American Humanist Association, says, "Humanism is the light of my life and the fire in my soul. It is the deep felt conviction in every fiber of my being that human love is a power far transcending the relentless, onward rush of our largely deterministic cosmos. All human life must seek a reason for existence within the bounds of an uncaring physical world. And it is love, coupled with empathy, democracy, and a commitment to selfless service which undergirds the faith of a humanist." We welcome such a faith committed to justice and equity here in this vibrant and active community. My name is Dana Moore. I use she, her pronouns, and I serve as your student minister this year, alongside the Reverend Dr. Natalie Fenimore, the Reverend Israel Buffardi, and my supervisor, the Reverend David Carl Olson. This vibrant community offers many activities. Today, after our service, we invite you to join us for lunch. If it is your first time, please see a friendly face outside at the welcome desk. We would love to invite you to be our guest for lunch, and all other friends are welcome to make a contribution. Also, after the services today, we will have a presentation by the Save Our Future Task Force. Please be sure to join them and learn about the ways our community is making way for our future leaders. I'd like to invite Laura Torf to the lectern.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's that wonderful time of year to sign up for the all-congregational retreat at Camp Zeke again this year. We are so proud to say that we are registering everybody paperless this year, though. It's all online. So there are two ways. If you happen to have the church app on your phone, you can just tap, scroll, and sign up through the app, or go on your laptop to UUCS.org and sign up. But if you'd like some help, we're going to have a table in the social hall after services. We'll be there to help you with all that tech stuff if you'd like. And for our chalice lighting, the title of our chalice lighting today is Banned Book Chalice Lighting by Julie Conrady. We light this chalice remembering the freedoms long established in our nation: freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom from the establishment of religion. We light this chalice honoring those who exemplify protecting those freedoms: librarians, booksellers, teachers, authors, journalists. We light this chalice so that by its light we may read all those books with archaic language, books with offensive material, books which affirm the diversity of the human race, books which normalize our varied sexualities, books which share multidimensional perspectives of history. May we bask in the glow of its light this morning as we illuminate, brighten, and radiate because of the books we have read and the books we have yet to read.
Good morning. Buenos dias. My name is Cassandra Montenegro. You can call me Cassie. I use she, her pronouns in English and ella in Spanish. I'm really happy to be here with you all again. It's a gift. It is a gift. Today, we gather together as seekers of truth, of love, of justice, in all of our humanness. Let me say that again, in all of our humanness. Today, we gathered together to ask the hard questions of our community, of our ancestors, and of ourselves. Today, as we do this brave and sacred work for our children and our children's children, some known, many yet unknown, I ask you to notice at what points, if any, do you feel yourself tense up or constrict? Is your body telling you it needs to stretch a little more? Maybe move sideways in your chair, or maybe even stand. I know it might be a little unconventional here because you're all up here. I also ask you to notice at what moments during the service, if any, does your body allow itself to open? What does that opening feel like? Does it start in your chest? Maybe in your hands? Maybe a lightness somewhere in the head. I ask this noticing of you because it's a reminder to also ask it of myself. Now, in community, reminding one another, let us worship together. Please rise in body and our spirit for our opening hymn, number 315, This Old World. Although I cannot be certain, I would like to think it's one that Elizabeth Cabot Cary Agassiz would have sung.
Please remain standing for our words of affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need. This do we affirm and covenant with each other. Please be seated. Each Sunday, we take a special collection which extends our vision of beloved community by supporting work in the world which addresses human need. This Sunday, our offerings provide support for Erase Racism. On the screen are ways to give. Please, give as you are able.
Spirit of life and love, we each carry so much in our lives. Be it pain, grief, joy, uncertainty. How do we know that the path we are on together is moving us forward? How do we open ourselves up enough to ask the difficult questions of one another and ourselves so that we may be moved to action? So that we may check in with our bodies.
I wish to see the day where everyone can be free. Our worship leader today has had the privilege of studying at Harvard Divinity School. And in Cassie Montenegro's studies as a seminarian, has delved into the history of women at this prestigious institution. The excerpt of our reading today comes from an article about Elizabeth Cabot Cary Agassiz. It is written by Wesley Harmato, who was and is read by myself. I want to tell you a little bit about Elizabeth Cabot and why her story is so interesting. Elizabeth was born in 1822 and was an early advocate for the education of women. She even went on to begin her own school, where she educated women who became distinguished in their field, though they were not welcome at Harvard Divinity School at the time. She came from a family who, on both her maternal and paternal family sides, had business in the West Indies until the slave rebellions in the last years of the 18th century forced them to flee. Elizabeth met her husband in 1846, Louis Agassiz, who was a known scholar, historian, and writer. Louis Agassiz's work was quite controversial at the time, yet this was unknown to the mainstream world. It has been written that in the rounding out of Elizabeth's life, where she was known to work right alongside her husband and edit his work, Louis and her extraordinary role in promoting education for women, it is important to pay some attention to her religious involvement and belief. Typically, she mentioned the church in her diary on that rare occasion when she couldn't attend. But after the loss of her husband and the death of her stepson, she wrote, "I've an idea that to leave this earth is not at once to enter heaven. The Catholic idea of purgatory, not in a material sense, seems to be founded on a reasonable idea. There seems no reason why the fact of death should absolve you at once from all your faults and errors and their consequences. But I think somewhere in the far future, there must be a time when all is made right for us, and the happiness of which we have such lovely glimpses here becomes a safe and permanent possession." Please join us for our congregational hymn number 55 in your gray hymnals and on the screens, Dark of Winter.
Let your peace flow through me. Thank you so much for the music. You guys here always do an incredible job with the music, so thank you, choir. As you probably already inferred, I like to begin with a thanks, with a gratitude practice. And I want to thank Reverend Fenmore and for all of you at Shelter Rock for inviting me back. For Dana and other worship collaborators, we came up with the term worship collaborators here, whose wisdom and feedback I hold with me today. For those who have done so much of the unpacking work to share and tell stories that still need to be told. For you, who are on this journey with me and one another here today. Today's sermon title begins with a question that was gifted to me in a moment of deep spiritual reckoning. I had a feeling that it was coming, but I didn't know how. The question ended up being, what are we not seeing? As a religious movement, and to ask you that in good conscience, I must first return to the moment where my own heart asked me this question. This question that the language of it may feel ableist for some. So I want to be clear that the way that I use the language of sight is largely metaphorical with regards to the spiritual inner sight. However, if that is off-putting and if that feels like there is this tension in your body with it, please share that with me later so I can think of other ways to name this question. So last spring, I was invited to attend the Legacy of Slavery walking tour at Harvard, led and built by a group of the chaplains at Harvard College. As I understand it, it was a spiritual outgrowth from an initiative at what is now the Radcliffe Institute to look at the legacy of slavery at Harvard. It was a report and recommendations from the Presidential Committee. As a then member of the Harvard Divinity School community, I knew about the report. We had even discussed it in our Unitarian Universalist history class, as our religious history is greatly connected to that of Harvard. So I was on this tour, and we were going to different sites around the campus, and in my Unitarian Universalist history class, I had learned about this woman who Dana so kindly read you an excerpt of her updated and revised biography. And I had to kind of embody her as best I could in a moment. I don't know if any of you did this in grade school or middle school. You can do it at a graduate school level too. It's it's like a walking, or it's like a live museum kind of thing. So I remembered trying to study up on her, but I wasn't expecting to encounter her and to encounter the feeling that I had of deep responsibility and weight as soon as I stepped into this one quad area with her name splayed across what is now this admissions building for the college. I went as part of my work I was then working in the Office of Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, specifically in the Office of BGLTQ Student Life as a graduate assistant. So I was there with other folks from our office, and that was a real gift. Yet that question emerged because I'm looking at this woman's words knowing that there is so much good that she did. And now knowing that there is a pew named, that it's like her pew, that is at First Parish in Cambridge Unitarian Universalist. She was part of communities that I am now a part of. So from the leadership perspective, it felt like there was a question here. And it was, at first, what am I not seeing? As a light-skinned Latina, I wondered what systems and prejudices I, myself, am perpetuating. What legacies, material, ethical, social, religious, am I putting to good, reparative use? And which legacies, material, ethical, social, religious, am I hiding behind? As part of our wider association's commitment to reckoning with our history, we consider the life and legacy of Elizabeth Cabot Cary Agassiz, a Cambridge Unitarian and first president of the women's educational institution that would later become Radcliffe College. As Dana had mentioned to us, she was a wife and close collaborator of Louis Agassiz, a biologist and geologist whose approach to teaching did revolutionize the study of natural history and whose scholarship simultaneously advanced theories in support of scientific racism. He was a naturalist who depended on his powers of observation. And she was there, in many ways, along with him. It's his legacy, as much as it is hers. I live in a building that may be the reason why I feel this so viscerally and why there's like my stomach feels kind of hot. I'm feeling nervous in my body right now. It's not the kind of thing you want to say from the pulpit. You're supposed to be, well, in the words of Resma Menachem, have a settled body. But my body is not settled in this moment. I'm still engaging with this on a very personal level. I spent a lot of divinity school trying to unpack my Cuban American ancestral, spiritual ancestral lineages. And one of the points of connection was actually in the Museum of Comparative Zoology that Louis Agassiz was responsible for founding. And he was only able to do that because his wife was a very, very savvy, I would say, educational businesswoman. She kept their house afloat when he was investing a lot in putting together these very costly collections as a result of expeditions. One of those expeditions was to Cayo Coco in Cuba, where I've never been, but where my grandfather used to dive. And this one piece of coral is the closest I've ever come to coral from Cuba. My thesis was on coral grief. It's a liturgy of lament. I grew up snorkeling on South Florida waters. I grew up loving what I would later find out is an animal, a coral animal that's symbiotic, collaborative, and cannot live without the algae, cannot live without its community. Now, so all this is going on, and I come back to the EDI office, and I start thinking, well, I'm thinking about this from this Unitarian Universalist perspective, like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to seek religious leadership in this faith, and like, I'm starting to feel this weight that is not just mine to carry. I think that's one of the myths. That's one of the myths. So in that spirit of collaboration, I showed the blurb and like a draft, an earlier draft of the sermon, to a friend and colleague, Nina Litton, who's an interfaith chaplain and spiritual advisor to the indigenous community at MIT. And Nina stepped in and let me know what I wasn't getting right. Not that it's totally her responsibility, it's not. But I knew I needed to ask for guidance. Nina explained to me that how we treat our ancestors is how we treat ourselves, how we treat our children and our grandchildren. I made a mistake in the sermon blurb for today. Yeah, the one that you all got. I used the word ancestral reconciliation when talking about the work that many of us believe we are committed to doing in Unitarian Universalist spaces, and how those spaces then interact with other secular and spiritual spaces that we live and work in throughout our lives. Now, Nina and I go way back to a Zoom People of Color Caucus space circa spring 2022 during lockdown. And we built a really strong relationship. So Nina, when she tells me it's not reconciliation, ancestral reconciliation, but it's a question of ancestral honoring, I listen to her. We are the descendants of our ancestors and the ancestors of our descendants, is what Nina tells me. She goes on to say, in Western culture, many of us may need to reconsider and heal the intergenerational family systems. I wonder, what was Elizabeth Cabot Cary Agassiz's mode of healing? What does her life, her legacy, teach us about how we choose to actively live into our own? More importantly, what work is vital for you to do now together in your own lives, in your own pews here at Shelter Rock, that uncomfortable and inconvenient as it may be, is part of your healing journey and your spiritual legacy too. I alluded to the complexity of Elizabeth Agassiz. And I think I would be largely remiss if in telling her story, I didn't at least uplift a few early Radcliffe students. So if you'll permit me. And this is from the online Legacy of Slavery report. These are excerpts. The story of African Americans in Harvard during the 20th century includes the experiences of Black women at Radcliffe College. The story of Radcliffe is itself a tale of resistance. It was founded in 1879 as the Society for the Collegiate Instruction of Women, or known as the Harvard Annex, colloquially, to create opportunities for women then excluded from the university. I think there's a quote that says the goal was to get the exact same education that was being provided to the men. They used the same professors. Radcliffe stood out among its peers on the matter of access for African American women. It was considered by far the leader among those peers, as it consistently enrolled more Black women than any other 7 sister colleges. Nevertheless, the women educated at Radcliffe overwhelmingly were white, and they initially hailed predominantly from the Anglo-Saxon upper classes, part of the network that Elizabeth Cabot Cary Agassiz own prior school and familial connections drew from. While the relatively few Black women educated at Radcliffe welcomed the opportunity to be a part of a community of women scholars, they also encountered discrimination. They were denied campus housing and scholarships, significant barriers to educational access and academic success, yet many of these same women went to play important roles in building a better and more equitable nation. For example, notably and notwithstanding the racial prejudices that Elizabeth Cabot Agassiz entertained herself working alongside her husband, the report notes that Radcliffe College admitted Alberta Virginia Scott, its first Black alumna, as part of its first graduating class in 1898, during her tenure as president. Yet here I am, bringing Elizabeth back to the fore. Eva Beatrice Dykes became the first African-American woman to complete the requirements for a PhD in the United States in 1921, one of 3 Black women in the country to earn a PhD that year. A distinguished scholar of English literature, in her work, Dykes foregrounded white authors' little discussed views on race and slavery and elevated the prose, poetry, and song of Black writers. And then Carolyn Bond Day. She entered Radcliffe in 1916 and began work on her second undergraduate degree, which was common because Black folks who had already obtained degrees in a Black institution had to start their degree all over again at Harvard or Radcliffe. So Day studied anthropology under Ernest A. Houghton, an instructor and the curator of somatology, the study of human variation and classification, at Harvard's Peabody Museum, who was sympathetic to at least some of the eugenicist views of his era. And I would like to say that those views, by that point, were pretty popular and commonplace at Harvard. Under Houghton's guidance, though, Day began research into mixed-race families that would form the core of her path-breaking master's work. Her highly technical work pushed back against the race scientists and eugenicists at Harvard and elsewhere, like Agassiz, arguing that race is not a fixed category and that by no measure are people of color as a group inferior to whites. This work is still hailed today as groundbreaking demonstration using the same tools deployed by race scientists like Agassiz. These and numerous other acts, writes the report, illustrate the counter-history of resistance embedded in Harvard's history. So I ask you with this question of, what are we not seeing? What are this congregation's counter-histories, counter-biographies of resistance that are embedded here? I'd like to close today's sermon with the language from the Commission on Institutional Change, the widening of circle of concern, and it's an excerpt from a section entitled, "For People of Color When Times Get Tough." We are all born into systems of white supremacy, yet our ancestors gifted us with the strength of their survival. Consider using the following practices to build on a legacy of resilience and audacious hope. Now, it's a whole long list. You're going to get 4. Self-care. Get in touch with spiritual practices and sources of life that refill your cup, arm your humanity, make you feel whole, and give you integrity. Protect and use those practices and spaces regularly. I experienced that this morning with Dana, who led me through a few of hers. So thank you, Dana. Gather your people. Activate a small group of trusted friends who will take your call and give you honest and loving feedback. Understand your patterns of internalized oppression. When in your life do behaviors such as avoidance and denial of conflict, so those conflict avoidant folks here, you might be feeling something. So when do those behaviors of deflecting responsibility, learned powerlessness, and anger toward others in your racial or ethnic group appear? What cultural toxins have you internalized? Resmaa Menakem, who I had mentioned earlier, In My Grandmother's Hands, writes about metabolizing this. It's very metabolizing, I guess in this case, cultural toxins. And this is the last one. Explore your ancestral story. And I'm sure many folks here have done that already. And it's an ongoing process of visiting and revisiting. Call upon ancestral wisdom stories about resilience, creativity, pride, and excellence. How do those traits exhibit themselves in your personal and spiritual lives? Because they're there. Just are we seeing them? Please rise in body and or spirit for our closing hymn, number 346, Come, Sing a Song with Me. So many papers. As we leave our time together here today, let us boldly recenter the truths of our narratives so that we may reconcile, so that we may honor, heal, rewrite, or just discover what was already written and rebuild.
Thank you again, Cassandra Montenegro, for that beautiful perspective on our ancestries. Our worship has ended. Let our service to justice and equity begin. We extinguish our chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the energy of action.